Hi everyone, my name is Stacy. Recently I had to give up everything to be able to help my family, and I was not prepared for the horrors I faced, but I had to be brave because I was the only one who could take care of my loved ones. I was 22 years old and had a wonderful life as a student. I lived far away from home, but I felt just fine. I loved studying, I had a lot of friends, and I was dating a guy I loved very much. Yes, sometimes I missed home and my younger sisters, but otherwise everything was just perfect. One day my mother said that she wanted to get the whole family together for her birthday party, and she really wanted to see me. How could I refuse? So I packed a few things and went home. I thought I was only going to be there for a couple of days, but it turned out I was never going to go back to my college. And that was the last time I saw my boyfriend. But first things first, I was very glad to be back in the house where I had grown up, back in my room where nothing had changed, and I was especially happy to hug my little sisters. They were the sweetest girls in the world. Then it was my mother's birthday, and there were a lot of guests in our house. All of our relatives and friends loved my mother because she was the most positive person in the world, and she knew how to create happiness all around. But after the party, her mood changed. It was in the evening, all the guests had left, and the girls were asleep. I was helping my mom clean, and we started talking about my dad. My mother asked me if it was hard to accept his death and how I handled it. Yes, my father died when I was 12 years old, and it was a heavy blow. I remember how bad I felt. I cried all day and missed him so much. But it wasn't just nostalgia. My mom had a reason to mention my father. I saw tears come to her eyes, and she said it. My mother was seriously ill, and the doctor said she only had a couple of months left to live. Oh my God, this was just awful. I didn't even know what to say at that moment, so I just hugged my mom and we stood there for a while and just cried. After that, the most difficult period of my life began. We had to tell the girls that they were going to lose their mother. Imagine what a 13-year-old child feels when they learn this news. It's unbearably hard. Obviously, I couldn't leave my mom at this point in my life. More than that, I couldn't leave my sisters, so I had to drop out of college and be there for my family. I was counting on my boyfriend's support, but I couldn't get him to drop everything and move in with me. It was sad, but we decided to break up. After accepting the fact that we were going to lose my mom, we tried to live the last months as pleasantly as possible. We were together all the time. We walked, had fun, and even went on a trip. Then we spent the last couple of weeks of her life in the hospital. I can't tell you how I felt as I watched my beloved mother fade away, but there was nothing I could do about it. So I was just there for her until the end. And then it happened. The short beats of the heartbeat sensor turned into a long, sad squeak. And my mom went into another world. We were on our own now, and now I was a mother to my sisters, and I had to take care of them and help them cope with their grief. I had to be strong for them, but it was hard. After all, I'd lost my mother too, so I tried to stay strong during the day when I was with the kids, and I spent my nights crying into my pillow. We learned to live in a new way. I drove my sisters to school every day, and then I learned how to cook and keep the house in order. At some point, it became easier for us, and we realized that we could cope with everything and continue to live on. But the savings my mother had left was melting before my eyes, and I knew I had to find a job to support our family. But the thing is, I didn't finish my education, and I had a hard time finding a job. No one wanted to hire an employee without a degree, even though I left college for a good reason. One day I realized that I needed any job, just to get some money, and I saw an ad for a housekeeper. It was weird because this work offered a lot of money. It looked like a trap, but I decided to try anyway, especially since I was good at keeping the house clean. When I got to the interview, I understood why the promised salary was so big. It was a huge house in a very fancy neighborhood. The owner, Mark, was a solid businessman, and he was willing to pay this money to the housekeeper. I guess he liked me because I started working the very next day, and I have to say it was a strange job because the house already had a lot of staff to keep it clean. but it was just perfect for me. Every morning I drove the girls to school, then drove to work, and I was free at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I could earn money and pay a lot of attention to my sisters. This went on for a while until I began to notice some strange behavior from the owner of the house. Sometimes he would just watch me do my job, and sometimes he would start a conversation with me. He would ask about me and was interested in what I was doing outside of work. These conversations were always awkward, and I was very shy. He even invited me to lunch with him once. Needless to say, it was the most awkward lunch of my life, but he did it for a reason. At one point, I noticed that he was just flirting with me. I didn't know what to do in this situation, so I just smiled and then tried to find a reason to leave this strange conversation. And soon, I got confirmation that he wanted me to be more than just a housekeeper. Mark's wife suddenly came home and I was told that she wanted to see me. I went to her room and she said she had to have a serious conversation with me. You know, judging by how she looked, all her conversations were serious. She gave the impression that she was a very strict woman. At first, she just asked if I liked working in their house, but then we moved on to a more sensitive topic. She asked me how her husband felt about me. It was more like an interrogation. I didn't want to talk about him flirting with me, but I started to get nervous and she cracked me. She knew something like this could be happening, and she wasn't even surprised. She said it wasn't my fault, and she knew her husband was constantly cheating on her, but now she was determined to put an end to it. And now I had to help her, or she'd throw me out of the house. Of course, I didn't want to lose this job where I was making good money, so I had to do it. I had to give her clear proof of her husband's infidelity, and she said she would reward me for it. I didn't know how I could do it, and I was confused for a couple of days, but then I decided to just record our conversation on the phone, and soon I succeeded. Her husband and I were alone again, and he started hitting on me again. As soon as I realized I had enough evidence, I lied and said that I had to go. I got the tape and I sent it to Mark's wife, but it wasn't enough. She was very unhappy with what I recorded for her, and she was going to fire me, but I asked for a second chance. She needed video evidence, not just silly talk. If I didn't succeed, I would have to leave the house immediately. I was nervous all night, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't lose this job because I had to take care of my sisters. They only had me, and I couldn't let them down. In addition, this businessman was acting dishonestly, cheating on his wife, and he had to be punished. Soon I found the courage and I was determined to do it. The next day, Mark started flirting with me again, but much more openly, so I had to act. I hinted that I was going to clean the bedroom and winked at him. Then I quickly hid my phone with the camera on behind the curtain so he wouldn't see it. Soon Mark came in the bedroom and continued our conversation. Then he admitted that he had hired me because I seemed to him to be very beautiful and sweet. He took my hand and after a second he kissed me. The worst part was that I had to play along with him to get the video. I don't know how it would have ended if he hadn't heard a car pull into the driveway. I don't even want to think about it. Mark went to meet the guest and I grabbed my phone and ran out of the house. Later, I met with his wife and showed her the video. She was pleased. It was important for her to have this in order to accuse Mark of cheating, because this way she would be able to sue him for the property and punish him for his constant infidelity. As she had promised, I was rewarded and it was a huge amount of money for me. I couldn't have made that much in a whole year. It was probably a small part of what she was going to take from her husband. She said she could get me a job as a housekeeper for some of her friends, but I refused. I don't think I could forget this horror that happened to me, so I didn't want to work for people like that anymore, and you never know what could happen in another house. Then I came up with another plan. With the money I got, I could arrange to move to another city and continue my studies. Plus, I could rent out the house we used to live in and make an income. It would be the fresh start that our family needs so badly. It may be hard for us, but everything that happened to me made me realize that I would do anything to help my sisters. What would you do for your family? And what do you think about me setting Mark up? Was that fair? Write what you think in the comments, and be sure to share this story with your friends.